Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody and everybody who maybe listens to this as a recording. We're here representing Narara Ecovillage, which is located north of Sydney in New South Wales, Australia. And that brings me and my heart to the point of wishing to acknowledge the First Nation custodians of the land on which we are meeting today. And everybody is on different pieces of land that was once looked after by custodians, in our case, for 60,000 years. We would like to acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging, and recognize, I think, that there's a lot about talking about right now that actually reflects their wisdom and their capacity to hold country and community together. Thank you. I'd just like to say, I think that Pip and I are probably very excited, but we're also a little tired. Last weekend, we celebrated for this community a fairly significant milestone. It was 10 years since the land came into our custodianship. We now have about 250 members and we welcomed 70 this weekend, which was really exciting because we were able to do that for the last 2.5 years because of restrictions. So very busy with that. And then this was the next I wanted to do, which we're excited about as well. We've used sociocracy from the Lyndall Paris and was part of the first trade year. Since then, it's great we could do it, but we're inspired by it and we love it. Pip and I have also been working together on and off we've been members for nearly 7 years, I think. Well, certainly I've been 7 years and I think Pip very nearly 7 years. We're both sharing leadership with Liz, who's also on this call too, around this community circle where we look at the more intangible aspects of our community. Very blessed to have Pip's experience that's growing all the time of being a senior facilitator for prosocial training. And we realized the sort of transformative synergy that we believe exists between the lens, if you like, of prosocial and the practice of sociocracy. We're really excited to start exploring how those can be strengthened within our community at every level. So we're baby steps just now in developing that in the community. A lot of people don't know what prosocial is, and but we believe that particularly the development of our sociocratic practice as well. So after Pip's presentation on prosocial, I'm just going to share one example that has emerged for us within the community, where we actually explore with prospective members, so people who are on their journey to considering the village, sociocratic meetings without TED, with no agenda. We have a framework, but no agenda. What we're looking at is, if you like, the way of being rather than the way of doing and coming to decisions. But it's been really, really exciting component and adjunct to our other sociocratic. So that's what I'll be demonstrating. Pip has strong links. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to Pip now. Thank you, Pip.
Thank you very much, Scilla, and welcome everybody. So, as Scilla said, I'm a trainer for Prosocial World, and Prosocial is an approach to culture change, and it integrates 3 sciences, one of which is cultural evolution. So you might say that's exactly the same as culture change, but Prosocial aims to take cultural evolution in a positive prosocial direction, because evolution can go in any direction. So it's a blend of cultural evolution, also the Science of Managing the Commons, which was developed by Lynn Ostrom, and also the Inner Psychological Work. So today I'm going to be presenting slides that show the principles of managing the commons that were developed by Lynn Ostrom, and how well sociocracy supports the implementation of the principles. It really is hands down the best I've heard of as I've been teaching in listening to the ways that other people implement the principles. Sociocracy has got so much going for it. So there's also the aspect to prosocial of, as I mentioned, inner and outer work. And I have been fascinated to notice that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which were put in place basically to do some outer work to make things change. Their recent report said, look, they haven't had as much behaviour change as they would have liked. And they now realise that the inner development goals are what needs to be focused on. So prosocial's the same, pretty much aligned with that. We need the external structures and processes, and sociocracy's extremely strong in that area. And as I came online, I noticed that the very talk before ours was called Embodying Sociocracy Within. And I kicked myself and thought, dang, I should have watched that one, but I will later. So both of those are in place. So now I'm going to start a slideshow. There's quite a lot of slides, but because I am assuming that the people, you have familiarity with sociocracy, I'm not feeling a need to explain sociocracy. So I'll just be describing the sociocratic implementation methods that we have in place at Narara Ecovillage and which serve us well. Right. That's the name of our talk today. That's a photo of our half the lots have been sold and built on, and the other half have been sold but not yet built on. It's just giving a bit of background to Narara Ecovillage, and I do apologise for the amount of text. I'll try and talk to it if you don't want to read. The important thing is our aim to nurture
to go into presentation mode so that we see the slide in bigger, or is that, sorry, if it's hard for you, no problem at all, but it would make it a little bigger for us.
Oh, yeah.
Probably.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can do.
Yes, from current slide, probably.
Oh, okay. Anyway, is that okay?
Yes, gorgeous. Much prettier.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm more used to using Google Slides than PowerPoint, but anyway, this is back to PowerPoint. So our aim is to nurture a resilient and inclusive intergenerational community that inspires collaboration, innovation, and fun, to live with kindness, aware of our interdependence with others and the natural world, and to learn and demonstrate ways to thrive within the Earth's ecological capacity, drawing on Indigenous wisdom and fostering regenerative environmental, social, and economic practices. So this is an aerial basically showing you we're surrounded on three sides by forest, and we have a large dam. And that's the history there. We've got about 35 homes occupied. So within the context of implementing both prosocial and sociocracy, maybe a major challenge is that we're doubling the size of our membership, and that, of course, is the challenge. So what is prosocial behaviour? And how do organisations create cultures of mutual trust and collaboration? So prosocial behaviour, just if you Google it, is defined as voluntary behaviour intended to benefit another. It's characterised by acts of kindness, compassion, and helping behaviours, which many consider to be one of the finest qualities of human nature. So prosocial, the two major aspects are implementing the Prosocial Core Design Principles, which have been adapted from Lynn Ostrom's work. And sociocracy is a key implementation approach. The other part of prosocial, as I mentioned, the inner work, is fostering psychological flexibility in all members. That is the ability to stay centered, to be self-aware and yet open, and the ability to respond rather than react and focus on the shared goal. So in a nutshell, that's what prosocial is. I'm going to leave at least 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So Ted, I couldn't help but quote these. Ted's had a bit of an enduring interest in prosocial since about 2017, and he's written at least 2 articles. One was a chapter in the book, his book, Who Decides, Who Decides, a very good book for introduction to sociocracy practice, and then a blog about the Ostrom principles, the core design principles that we're about to look at in detail. So very briefly, here's Lynn Ostrom. And now why her work was so revolutionary is that before her work, there was an assumption in economic theory that we're all self-interested and that it's irrational to act altruistically. And this trait invariably results in the tragedy of the commons, where we greedily help ourselves what we need and don't think about what other people need. So we must rely upon markets, privatization, or top-down governmental actions to avoid the tragedy of the commons. So that was the prevailing economic theory, which is why Lynn's work was so revolutionary, because she actually found that people do manage to cooperate. Oh, my apologies, I'm just going to do this. Successfully in complex networks of groups and institutions, and that in supportive contexts, humans quite naturally act altruistically. And I think we see this again and again at the Ecovillage. It's quite heartening to see the goodness in people coming forward. Just, sorry, getting rid of that. Good. So the supportive context of what we're going to talk about now, and that is the prosocial principles being implemented. And if you have that right, which we're doing, I think, well under the circumstances at Narara, then prosocial behaviour thrives. Now, this is a bit too much to absorb in one go, which is why we don't need to get our head around it in one page, because I'm going to unpack each one separately and give an example of how we implement it at Narara Ecovillage. But I will give you a minute to cast your eye over this. These principles basically need to be implemented somehow in every group of any size if it is to be sustainable and effective. That's the finding of Lynn Ostrom. I'll move on now. So Ted, I hope that view is still okay, is it? Because I changed the view. Is it still a good, you can see it clearly?
We can see it clearly. I mean, the presentation mode would be prettier, but it's also okay.
Okay, I just wanted to see Zoom because I wanted to see you, but the other way is I'll go back, then I can't see you. And Ted, you can just let me know if you see any hands or anything. That would be great. I'll go back, sorry. Okay. So here are the 8 principles, and you can basically rate your own community on a scale of, say, 1 to 10. It's a good discussion to have in an eco-village, and indeed we did have it about 2 years ago. Now, for some reason, we were rated ourselves quite harshly, I think. Certainly I didn't quite expect, because this would be, for example, a 5, and this would be a 4, and this would be, well, no, it would be a 6, yeah. And that would be a 4 and a 5 and a 2. So in a way, it was a bit spot on, because at that time we didn't have any conflict resolution process, which we'll show you later. We're responding to that now. And so now I'm going to run through each one, starting with the first one, which is shared identity and purpose. So our eco-village relies on volunteer work. I think many eco-villages do. And volunteer work only happens if people feel that they're valued and can make a difference. So here it shows that genuine empowerment in the context of shared purpose means people know that their energy can make a difference in an area important to them. This is enormously motivating and will help build a resilient and strong community in an uncertain future. I'll jump now to the Core Design Principle 7, because it does show our structure, which is a sociocratic structure, and many of you will be very familiar with this sort of structure. So I don't think I need to explain much here. As you can see, we have the 5 operational circles here who meet monthly and are very aware of what each other's doing, and has double linking, of course, the sociocratic way. The co-op board is actually single link. One person does both functions because it works for us. And of course, the co-op board is responsible for legal and financial governance type matters, and matters relating to our, well, legal governance. Core Design Principle 2 is a really interesting one, because it's the sense of fairness that people have. Is my energy and effort seen and rewarded in a way that makes me feel valued and make me feel that I want to give voluntary time to this endeavour? So it's about a perception of fairness. Now, distribution of benefits can be done in different ways. I'll go into that in a minute. Right now, I just want to give you this example. And I do apologise for all the writing, so I'll read it. Please ignore that. I thought I'd deleted that. When the eco-village was first set up, the financial contributions to the commons was linked to lot ownership. However, what has evolved over time is that some lots have households of 1 adult and some have households of 6. And the challenge here is that some single person households thought it was unfair and in some cases unaffordable, and many members agreed. But change is difficult because if you come in on the basis of an understanding, then you're sometimes not keen to have a change. So the decision 1 year ago was to have a compromise model whereby 70% of contributions would remain paid by lot and 30% by the number of adults in the household. And this was implemented 1 year ago. Now, when I say that there are different ways of distribution so that people feel it's fair, this particular one appears to evolve based on need, because there were some members that said, look, not only did we come in on the basis of contribution by lot, but also in our particular case, we might have 2 adults, but only one can possibly work due to the fact we have a handicapped child or whatever. So now the other 2 ways of distributing benefits are either equally, which means across the board equal, which kind of was the initial idea of doing it by lot. So your contribution by lot is across the board equal, except that then this complication arose that, actually it's adults that pay the contribution. So the other way could be, and doesn't apply in this case, equitably. Now, equitable means that benefit is in proportion to contribution. Now, that would get really messy. We really don't want to go there where people are saying, I contributed this much and more than them and less than them. And oh my goodness. So we don't open that can of worms. So we're sort of doing this particular model. And Core Design Principle 4 is the tracking and reviewing of our agreed upon behaviours. Now, this is where sociocracy serves us very well, because it's tracking and reviewing is built in. Now, it's probably the one that, I think Narara Ecovillage does it well. So I'll show you more about that in a minute, how we do it. So the review is currently, it's in real time right now. They're reviewing how it went, and they actually ran a survey that's the results are being compiled right now. And they're going to note, should we keep the 70-30 model? Sorry about the jargon, but that means 70% of costs paid by lot, 30% by number of adults. Do we need to tweak it, change anything? This subcircle is going to report to Legal and Finance, which in turn is a by this date. And the parent circle for the review is Legal and Finance. Now I'm going to the Core Design Principle 3, Fair and Inclusive Decision Making. Now, sociocracy is just fantastic for the implementation of this principle. We make decisions in circles, we have rounds, and it requires both willingness to listen and willingness to speak. And in large groups, it takes special courage and persistence to speak up. So I don't need to dwell on that with this group, because I'm sure that you're very familiar with sociocratic decision-making. However, we can take questions at the end. Often the core design principles are clustered, just like 2 and 4 were clustered in our implementation and review process. This is a bit of an overview slide of if someone has a good idea and they want to make a proposal, which is another sociocratic solution to how to implement the core design principles. So, of course, any proposal must align with the domain and vision and aim of the actual circle. So that's why Core Design Principle 1, shared identity and purpose. It's incredibly important, that one. It's the most important design principle, because if we're not trying to move towards the same goal, the same outcome, then really all these ways of getting there are somewhat rendered ineffective. Then we have decision-making processes and tracking and monitoring. So using sociocratic proposal forming process, this is how Narara Ecovillage does it. Everything happens by volunteers, our members. And so talk about the idea with people you meet and check to see what's already being done. Start a discussion on our internal intranet notice board, a wiki. You might bring it as a members topic. That's just a place to informally float an idea if you want a bit of feedback at a members meeting. Then the formal part is sociocratic, of course, where you need to check out the domains and check out which of these circles, which of these stakeholders are impacted by any outcome from this proposal. And you need to at least talk to the team leaders and ask them to run it by their circle. But you may use many other ways of communicating your ideas. And I'll show you those in a minute, we've got many more different ways than just the wiki notice board. So we've got a process that you need to fill out a form if you have a proposal. And on that form, it will ask you to consider important things, work health and safety, insurance, the resources needed, such as space and location, facilities, services to support your idea, contractual requirements. And so obviously, this is the commons, isn't it? It's our Ecovillage commons. You want to use the commons, so you need to have a proposal that all members can see and be in agreement with. So there we are. You'll be in no particular order or consulting with at least the team leader. That team leader goes to the steering circle. The board will get a report on it, and it will at some point go to a members meeting. And then you'll go, once you've done all your background research, you have a good case, you can present it and go for consent. That's how we do it. And thanks to Liz for putting together this graphic. This is what I wanted to outline, that we have many more methods than just the internal intranet. Transparency and communication is key. Obviously, it's the principle number 4, but it's also a key sociocratic implementation, because there's such strength in everybody being aware of what everyone else is doing. You get good synchronicities, you can get good overlapping supporting behaviours, and kind of where the magic happens. I think things can get stuck when you have the siloed organisations that have no idea what the other department is doing. So this is a blessing. And here we have our wiki. You can read every minute of every meeting, of every circle, of every sub-circle. But if you don't want to do that, you can read a short written report that goes in every month to the steering circle. You can read the financial reports if you have the financial literacy. And a weekly e-newsletter is produced. Also, we use a Slack channel. So that's a bit like a WhatsApp channel. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And there are many, many channels. And you only have to sign up to the ones that you want to read. But the most important ones, I think, are what's called dispatch. That means everybody needs to know this. And the members lounge, which is look, this is, I don't really know the distinction, I suppose, but members lounge, things that members would have an interest in. And then there's many, many more. There might be parent circle, women's singing circle. There's maybe, can't even count them, 20. So many ways. But if you had a proposal that you wanted to float, you would post it to probably Dispatch or possibly Members Lounge. And then, of course, there's always oral reports and plain old interacting with people, like, how are you going? How's that going? And members' meetings with Q&A. So for people that know their way around these communication avenues, it is very effective. For newcomers, it can be a bit daunting. That's just a matter of time. There's a lot of cultural history to get across. The fifth design principle is graduated responding to helpful and unhelpful behaviours. And in this slide, I'm focusing on unhelpful because we have a Slack channel called Appreciations, and people use it regularly and love to post to it. Thank you for this. So, and this group of people did a great job, you know, cleaning up, ripping up carpet, you know, all the great things they do in maintaining our commons. But I think it's a societal thing that we don't really enjoy giving feedback that's saying like, hey, I didn't find that very helpful. So in order to have constant improvement, sociocracy knows, and sociocracy has the feedback mechanisms all the time. It has feedback to members of a circle. Can't actually the other feedback mechanisms, which Ted might elaborate on at the end of the talk, but it's built in, but we tend not to do them so much. So our collaboration circle, which is a sub-circle of community circle, is going to run some training in giving and receiving feedback, because I know if I get negative feedback, that's really hard to hear. And so I think I need as much training in receiving it as giving it skillfully, so as not to cause defensiveness and reactivity in the hearer. So we're trying to normalise it as part of normal village life, and that will help us to just get better and better in our sociocratic application and in our village life. Okay. So I'll just show this one quickly because the details don't matter, but we have developed a draft conflict resolution process. This is at this level, it's helping the individual to process something. At this level, it's helping the parties who are having initial difficulties to talk to each other. At this level, perhaps the communication's broken down and might need mediation. And at this level, it goes to the board. And why it came about was the board was getting some difficulties escalated direct to them, and it said, oh no, we don't want that. So this is just an example of how we are going to this year start to attempt to support our conflict resolution process by skill building. We can all get better at these things. This is the inner part of the prosocial, which I haven't focused on at all in this presentation, except to note that we're going to be doing training in the Ecovillage, and it will be something along the lines of authentic relating, so being self-aware and really able to respect your own point of view, because sociocracy does not advocate you becoming part of a big groupthink blob. It says honour yourself whilst being part of the group. So how else can you authentically contribute? So this is supporting. This is sociocracy supporting prosociality. So here it's the feedback one, really, gaining confidence in having difficult conversations. And it's key to continuous improvement. This one is exploring, and we've done it before at the village, but exploring further our implementation of the core design principles, and also just getting to understand a little bit better the role of the individual in a group. And we'll play a game, you know, how we can maximize self-interest or we can go with the common interest. And then we thought we'd have some community forums without agenda. So I think that's going to be a good segue, after this one. So core design principle 8 is that we have relationships with other groups, and one extremely obvious group, apart from Sociocracy for All, is the Global Ecovillage Network. So now I'm going to hand to Scilla. It's kind of a good segue because she's going to give an example of how prosocial and sociocracy are used informally, but in a very powerful way at Narara Ecovillage. Over to you, Scilla.
Thank you very much, Pip. I really appreciated that. And you're right. If we just have the next slide, sweetheart, that would be lovely. If you can click that for me, that would be great. Thank you very much. I just got one slide. But as Pip said, this really looks at having a space, if you like, without an agenda, but it follows the sociocratic. That was the picture from the weekend. That's our members who were there and those who were greeting the new members. So thank you, my dear. If we could go back to that slide before, that would be super, and then I can just follow the bouncing ball, if you don't mind. The slide before, if that's possible. If not, lovely. Thank you very much. I think that when we look at, that's fine, perfect. That's lovely, wonderful. That's lovely. We'll stick on that one. Thank you so much. As Pip said, our guiding principles and our frameworks are all around supporting our aim. Aims very often, like ours, get really large, if you like. They're big statements, and we have a commitment towards inclusion, and that implies diversity and implies a lot of things that are seen differently by different people, and quite complicated to work out that we're doing that is actually inclusive, particularly in a situation where we are, that our membership is really, so co-op members are the only people theoretically who can own land on the eco-village. But many people are drawn to our aim, which is so much bigger, and it's about the whole world and our human future on this planet. And they lack the financial resources to be able to buy a lot on their own in particular. So about 3 years ago, following the initiative that came, in fact, Liz, who's on the call, she is one of the pioneers of, if you like, of a collaborative living arrangement. She and her twin sister and their partners share a connected building with separate spaces and shared facilities to connect them. We also had another situation where there were two single women who realized that, in fact, if one brought her tiny house onto the land of the other person, that they were both going to be able to thrive and have their needs met and be able to manage financially. So in stage 1, we did have those initiatives, and then stage 2, I think there was always the intention to move towards a greater level of inclusion. That's complicated, particularly when you have things like distance. A huge country, Australia is vast, and people interested in Narara can come from all over. We've got quite a lot of it comes from Sweden. So thank you, Zoom. And thank you also to Zoom for enabling us, in fact, to start to connect people through a network that, as a Scot, I liked the acronym of CLAN. And I think a lot of Eleanor Ostrom work would have looked at places where there were clans working really well together over considerable periods of time in history. So our collaborative living at Narara clan network formed as a connection point for people who either were looking for sharing or who were not able to connect with us because they lived at a distance. Through COVID, of course, we weren't able to have large open day groups going around. We were initially allowed to have small groups, and we decided to specialize those groups, and were really surprised to see that the one that was really heavily subscribed, and we had to have multiple groups, were people interested in collaborative living. So it seemed like we were listening to a need that was out there. The other one, so I'm really interested in that part, but I'm also interested in the journey. We call it the journey to joining of people who are interested in the village. And I would actually say it's the journey to determining whether they would like to join, because when you start, you don't quite know whether the destination is actually the one you want to get to. So I brought those two kind of concepts together, and particularly have encouraged people on the journey to join what we set up, which was a weekly clan network open to absolutely anybody. So anybody on this call would be welcome to just say they'd like to be part of those Zoom sessions. We have somebody connecting in from Sweden whenever they can before they go to work, and other people from all over the country.
One more minute, Scilla, because we've got to have Q&A.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, my dear. So basically, those meetings are, they use the skeleton or the framework of sociocracy. We do opening round, we acknowledge country, we rotate the facilitation, we co-create the agenda, we have no minute taking, but we do make some decisions that are relevant to us, and we close with a reflection on it. And what people have said to me is that that enables them to get down into the inner work rather than stay in the head, that it actually has given them confidence in actually being, when they go into a meeting, which is more like one of the business meetings, that they actually can practice waiting, listening, and responding better. And it's a palpable experience that people usually leave those meetings feeling enlivened rather than depleted. Whereas if they'd gone to meetings in their previous workplaces or other situations, they've left feeling exhausted. So I think, so the rhythm and the practice of those relationships are deepened, and the often hidden bedrock of community is laid. So that was one of the ways that I feel that we are trying to bring in prosocial principles into using sociocracy into the village. And our members who also can join, anybody can join this. And I've got another community that's actually really interested in linking in as well, because they think this is what they need, is a way of having a meeting where there is not too many heavy decisions and opinions to be made, but you can get to know one another better. So I'll stop there, Pip, and we can answer any other questions. I hope that's given you a flavour of the clan group. Thank you.
Thank you, Scilla. I think that's very valuable because it's more the heart of sociocracy rather than all the processes that we need to do when we have serious decisions to make. Clan tends to focus on connection, and that's beautiful. Yes, so over to questions.
Well, let me ask, what did you do around questions? Over here. I have my nerdy questions, but I will put them at the end of the pile. Or maybe I will ask it and inspire others. I'm curious how much, let's see, how do I even ask this? My question is around how much do people in your community know about, like, how explicit is that to people, I guess? Does that question make sense? Because in my community, sometimes it seems like people are interested in tools and, frameworks and this and that, but not overly. How's your experience about all of that?
Ted, do you mean the tools of sociocracy?
Well, no, yeah, it's more that I was curious about prosocial. That's why I asked.
Oh,
But
yeah.
yeah, what's the experience with that?
Yes, well, look, it is early days because only some people in the village have been trained in prosocial, and I haven't been as visible as I could have been due to personal circumstances but nonetheless, we've run a couple of workshops about the principles, and they're such common sense, really, that, you know, they're unlikely to meet any pushback. How well known they are, probably, I don't know, not as well known as we're aiming for. This year, we're planning to really, you know, keep communicating about it. Of course, a challenge, I guess, is when sociocracy was introduced 10 years ago at the beginning of the organisation, and maybe the talk of prosocial maybe only happened 3-4 years ago. So, you know, unless people understand what it is, they might just react saying, oh, for goodness sake, we've got sociocracy. We don't need another different method or something. And then you have to explain that it's not, in fact, different method at all. So, Matt, I hope that answers it. Probably we haven't, you know, we've got a way to go, I think would be the answer I would give. Scilla, feel free to differ or support.
I
Any
think
other
she's.
question?
I agree.
Yes, I
it makes
would.
a difference. Difference.
So a little choppy internet-wise, but Joel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just a brief question. Just wondering how you're working out financial inclusion in the Ecovillage. I understand. So people, is there a minimum price to enter? People have to buy land. How does financial inclusion works?
Oh my
I would say,
goodness.
Joel. Yep. Sorry, Pip, you
Scilla, go. No, you go.
I think, Joel, the truth is that it's extremely difficult. Maslow's hierarchy, when you apply it to an organization like this, the first baseline is economics. We're in a very relatively wealthy part of the world. The foundation we need to get that in place. So membership is currently directly related to the purchase of shares in the co-op. And so people purchased $30,001 shares to become a membership. And so that could be technically me on my own, or it could be me with my partner, or me and my partner and another two if we were going to, for instance, work in a collaborative arrangement. But so it is at this stage, Joel, I'd say we've got a way to go with that, because it's also, we have to be able to clear the debt, which has all been internal. We haven't been to the banks, which is amazing. We've done it all from people actually being brave enough to put their money forward. But I think that the next phase will be looking at how that will take a lot of, you know, understanding of that. Just now speaking, a rent I think would not be a member of the co-op. They might, and I think that there are ways that can start to shape. Thank you. I hope that's answered your question, Joel.
Yeah, thanks. Some of it, sorry, you're kind of breaking up, but as if I understand correctly, you're planning on working something to where people could rent eventually. Is that what he said?
Yes, they can rent now, but they can't participate as fully as I think a long-term renter would really like to. So we've got to look at that's
No,
a challenge to.
yeah, I know it's not easy to reconcile, and you know, like we're in Canberra, right? That's my wife Anna. We'll probably come down and visit you guys, but you know, I tried to start, you know, we have a few attempts at eco villages down there, and then also community wise, but that was one of the major questions. I mean, there was one organization there, they kept talking to themselves, calling themselves the heart of the village, and they wanted inclusion, they wanted everybody to be there. But at the end of the day, when it came down to coming in, your tiny house on a small lot of maybe, I don't know, like 20 meters by 20 meters was $250,000, which I kind of put my hand up and I said, well, what do we do with the guys that are working on minimum wage? They won't even get in if they go to the bank. Well, we're promoters, so, and I've lived long enough. Well, long enough. I mean, my ex-wife and kids are in Panama, so I talk to them regularly. I spent a year and a half there, and I seen the consequences of the Great Divide. When you get into extreme poverty, which is there, which I'm sorry to say, first world nation, there's a divide between the rich and the poor that's greater. I'm sorry, at the end of the day, the poor just don't put up with it. I've seen lots of theft going on down there, but it's theft out of survival, and they will go to those that have. Sorry, right? So
Absolutely.
anyways, I got to congratulate you. I got to congratulate you on how far you came. That's amazing. I know that's not easy. So congratulations on that. We hope to come and visit you. And yes, we still got lots of work to do, I guess. Thank you.
Then send us we can connect via email and you can join the clan group anytime and just have a yarn. So that.
Thank you. That's really good. That's what I wrote down. I really want to be part of this. I think this is amazing. Thank you for sharing that with the rest of the world. And I think I got quite a few number of friends that would probably be interested. If it's something that's open, people can just watch and witness. That's a great contribution to the world right there. One step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you very much. Any other?
Mara, Nana, Ira, Samara, anything you want to say? Samara's content. Right. Fill me in again on, so half of the lots are sold or built. What's the situation again? It's so hard to stay.
Yes, I'm speaking approximately, but half of the lots, all the lots are sold now, stage 1 and stage 2. Half of them are built, which is basically most of stage 1. Mm-hmm. That's around about 35 houses out of potentially 40 have been built in stage 1. And then we've got another, say, 42 sold but not built in stage 2. So we've currently got 250 members, and I think 60 of those are children, about 190 adults.
Sweet.
That's getting big, Ted.
If I can add to that, Pip is absolutely right. In the second stage, there are also some larger lots, which now through council agreements, our council has been one of our biggest barriers. We are able to potentially have multi-occupancy on, I think there are certain lots that it would be possible to have multi-occupancy. So we're on the brink, Joel, this might be, of interest to you in terms of, this is a little chink towards maybe greater inclusion. We're exploring what options we could develop in use of the multi-occupancy planning provision to be more inclusive. But there's a little window now that we might be able to work on, and we're hoping to do that as well in as collaborative and as sociocratic a way as possible.
No, and if I may just respond to that, because I've had a bit of experience back there in Canada on it, and you're right, city council, because we were outside of a big city. I love to Google where you guys are at exactly, but we're in the countryside. There's plenty of land, and it's like, city. We looked into we look into tiny house, we look into yurt, we look into straw bale, and the biggest obstacle is it was city council yet, but it was a taxpayer. Like I had a baby boomer come straight up to me and say, hey, you come and build your straw bale mud house, it's going to make the price of my house go down. So it's kind of like, screw you, screw your generation, and don't make the price of my house fluctuate. Thank you very much. So it's like, hey, nice to meet you too, So that was That's kind of my welcome. But at the end of the day, you know, I think if you get the right motivated group, you could towards the end in Canada, and I was in Sutton, Canada. I found out there's a Sutton, Australia. I was in Sutton, Canada. I'd moved the council toward, they might have moved toward creating you might want to look into that, and we'll be in touch on that. They would actually allow a part of the village to sort of have yurts or tiny house or things like that. So it was a whole thing around dezoning and sort of making it safe to people and reassuring taxpayer that no, we're not going to devalue the price of their houses. So there's a whole strategy around that too.
I just noticed it's time. We have to hop on over to the closing. I hope you
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you.
Come over there. You can find
Thank you, Ted. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Look forward